All right, everybody, welcome back to the Texas Rangers Fanatics podcast. It has been a minute, I know, a little hiatus, but I'm back and we got a lot to talk about and also not a lot to talk about. So, starting with today, the Rangers have lost their 12th straight game, longest losing streak, ties with 1982. And it's not pretty. There's not much truly to say on that end, but they lost 3-1 to the Astros today, and they actually did snap one streak. It was their innings streak of not having a lead, which it's still a little confusing, but they had not led for 99 consecutive innings, which was fourth all time behind the 1910 White Sox at 100 innings, the 1963 Colt 45s at 102 innings, and both the 1916 Pirates and the 1932 Red Sox for 103 innings. Now, technically, because they were on the road, they didn't end up holding that lead, so in my opinion, they were not... they technically still didn't have the lead, but I think based on how Elias Sports Bureau tracks this, they broke the streak, so I don't really know. But continuing on from that was another thing that happened today. And some other unfortunate stats from the past couple of days. As of July 24th, the Rangers were 57-101 over their last 365 days. So I guess now that'd probably be 56-102 or something like that. Not not very pretty there. And also, as of last night, over the last 10 games, Texas had scored 15 runs and was batting 151. So not good baseball at all. But very long intro aside, we have a lot to discuss today. So no ads today, no ad reads, no business. Tried to get a couple interviews going here, but stuff fell through, and I'm still working on some things, so don't worry. But I know this is a very hot topic, so I wanted to get a maybe mini episode out for it. I don't know how long it will last. Y'all know I have a tendency to talk for a long time. So let's get right into it. And what I want to start by talking about is the current state of the club. This was a tweet from Evan Grant, which, by the way, I'm getting all of these stats from both Evan Grant and Stefan Stevenson on Twitter. They're two of the top Rangers reporters, so if you need news on top of what I do, these guys are of course on top of it. That's literally their jobs. So this is from Evan Grant this afternoon. The 10 players and starting pitcher in the Rangers lineup today accounted for just under $16.1 million in full season payroll equivalents. There are 65 players in MLB who began the season with annual salaries higher than that. I don't know exactly what to make of that, but to be completely fair, it is a lot of minor league players that have been brought up, as well as a couple of veterans. Kiner Falefa, I think he's still on a rookie contract. Ibanez definitely is. Nate Lowe, I'm not sure what his deal was, but I do know off the top of my head Joey Gallo was $6.2 million roughly, and that pretty much everyone else is not that much. David Dahl, I think, is like $3 million. Curtis Terry just got here, so he's might not even be on the full salary yet. And then Brock Holt, Eli White, and of course, former player that I've interviewed. Well, he still is a player, but I formerly interviewed him, Taylor Hearn, who had a great start today. Actually, it was 3 scoreless innings, I think. So kudos to him. But this has just been ugly, as we all know. So I thought that was interesting because I've always said a big part of the issue with this team is the lack of spending money. Now, there's been a lot of debate over this on Twitter about whose fault it is, if it's John Daniels, if it's the owners, if it's the GM, which is technically Chris Young now, or what the issue is. And a good thing that Evan Grant pointed out was that it's kind of everything, you know? It's seemingly a culmination of everything bad happening at once for Texas right now. Now, there's actually not too many injuries. I think two of the biggest ones I can think of course, Willie Calhoun Jonathan Hernandez and Jose Leclerc. So those are a couple of the big ones. But, I mean, there's not really anything, They still have Gallo. They still have many of the other main guys that they use. Of course, still have Gibson, Ian Kennedy, Joe Barlow, Spencer Patton, who could be a trade deadline acquisition, by the way, for a different team. So I don't know what the issue is, but going into this season, they were not predicted to do well. I don't think it was quite this low, something like 90 losses. They're on pace for about 107 losses, I think. So let me see if I can do the math real quick. Yeah, they're on pace for about 57 wins and 162, so 105, 106 losses, after today. As some of you saw during the All-Star break, I did a video reacting to my previous prediction for the season, which I said they would win 75 games. About that, I was just a little bit off. They're not going to win 75 games. I don't know what they're going to end up with, but the pace is about 56, 57 wins. So not looking good on that end. I know this offseason is going to be huge for them. They need to show that they can compete because as of this podcast, they have not signed Jack Leiter yet, which don't freak out because it's a big deal. It's like $8 million. So they have to make sure everything logistically is good. But the whole thing with this situation was that they were supposed to be more or less ready to compete by the time this new stadium was up, right? They had the runs in 2015 and 16 where they won back-to-back division titles, like 90-plus games a year. Actually, I think technically the 2015 was like 80-something, but that's besides the point. And then 2017 was mediocre, and 2018 and beyond has been pretty rough. So the goal was definitely to have a team that you could put on the field that would at least be somewhat competitive by the point that we're currently at. However, we all know that has not been the case. Last year, they were second worst in baseball in the shortened 60-game season. And this year, they are inching up on that number one worst team spot, just behind the Diamondbacks. I'll have to actually look at the standings as well here real quick, but I know as of yesterday, they were 4.5 games back, and the Diamondbacks did lose today, so it should remain the same, and it looks like it is 4 games now. The Orioles are 1 game in front of the Rangers, so to speak. They're 34 and 64, and Texas is 35 and 65. So if that's something you're looking into, know that they're pretty close on that end. That's what I've been looking at because at this point in the season, they are not playing for anything except for player development. So you got to look on the bright side. But I went a little off topic there, going back to the future and where they were supposed to be at. They're going to have Jack Leiter, hopefully very soon. They're going to have Josh Young coming up very soon. He's killing it in AA right now, batting like 300. So my point is not everything is going to be bad. And there's also Sam Huff now in AA, I believe he's at. So one of the things, though, that just reminded me of is I think they did call Curtis Terry up a little bit early. I don't know how old he is, but a lot of it's not his fault anyway. But he has not done well since they called him up. Hasn't been very long, but he was very obviously doing well in AAA, and that is one of the biggest all-time flaws of the Rangers is developing players and developing pitching. A lot of examples. Profar, he was rushed. They called him up at 19. Odor, they called him up at 19. Mazzara, they called him up at 19. I mean, the list goes on. I think maybe one of the best homegrown players they've had is Derek Holland. Not super long ago, but definitely a considerable amount of time ago. So, once again, getting off topic, though. But the Rangers need to really evaluate where they are as a franchise and determine what's next, because I know the owners pretty much only care about money, And despite how well they've been doing right now, attendance-wise, that's largely in part because they were the only team that was allowing full capacity. And now they're doing all these kind of deals like the BOGO tickets that are coming up in a couple days. That's the 27th and 28th of July, in case you're not listening to this the day it came out. So you might have missed it, but besides the point again. So that eventually people will stop showing up, no matter how cool the ballpark is, no matter, the AC, the deals, whatever else you want to do. So they need to evaluate what they need to do going forward in order to make the team better, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to the team. And for the players too, I'm sure it's not fun right now. Chris Woodward as the manager, he's been less than happy. The players are probably not having fun, losing 12 in a row, being in one of the worst stretches in baseball history offensively, and in franchise history, certainly. They're 3 games back, or 3 games shy, rather, of tying the franchise all-time losing streak record at 15 games in 1972 when Ted Williams was the manager of the team. And it's just been a mess. One thing that I would like to point out as well as that 1973 season, 1972 season, they lost exactly 100 games. And then the next season in 1973, they lost 105 games, which they're on pace for that this year. Surprisingly, though, 1972 was a 154-game season. So I'm not sure if there was some kind of strike or shortage or something, but yeah, they were not doing well in those years. And 6 times total, the franchise, including the Washington Senators, has lost over 100 games. 2 of those were the Rangers, and the other 4 times were the Senators: 61, 63, 64, and 62. So pretty crazy stuff. The only recent times that the Rangers have gotten close to that was 2014 and 2018. They lost 95 games. 1985, 1982, they lost 98 games in 82 and 99 games in 85. So it's been all over the place. But 2018 was their most recent, closest that they've gotten to losing 100 or more games, and it's almost certain that will happen this year. So the part that you're probably all wondering is, what do they need to do then? I keep talking about this. They need to evaluate this, evaluate that. I think it starts from the top, because I don't know how long the current owners have had the team, but I feel like they need to move on. They need to sell the team, get their money, and go off and retire, because I'm sure they're old anyway. And I know it's not all their fault, as I mentioned earlier, but I think that would be partially beneficial. They already fixed the GM issue. John Daniels is the president of baseball operations now, technically, so a lot of it is on Chris Young, and it's to be seen. He's not fully in control, I think. I remember there was some weird thing like, JD still says mostly what to do, but Chris Young has the GM position, so that's part of it. JD gets a lot more slander than he really is warranted for. He's had his bad trades, he's had some good trades, but a lot of it comes down to the players at the end of the day, right? And then that's when we get down to that level, the coaching and the players and this and that. I've had mixed opinions about Woodward, but I think overall he is good. It might not be the worst thing to let him go after the 2022 season, because I think that's when his contract is up. Not to his fault, but it's just one of those things where, okay, we're moving into the next era. Let's get a new manager. For example, well, maybe not the best example, but Ron Washington's tenure ended when the Rangers went downhill again. They got Jeff Bannister, and he had them in 15, 16, 17, and I think a little bit of 18 too. I don't remember. But then they got Chris Woodward, and he was trying to get the team going, scrappy young group of kids, younger players mostly, a couple veterans in there. and that hasn't worked. So I think it would be beneficial to move on to a new manager as well. As far as the team roster itself goes, that's pretty much been completely torn down. They still have Joey Gallo, but they got rid of Elvis. They got rid of Odor, which I totally agree with. So not a lot of franchise players left, and some of them have been injured, as I discussed before. Willie, Jonathan Hernandez, Jose Leclerc. So those are some of the guys you definitely want to build around, but I do believe they need to keep Joey Gallo. So getting into that conversation, there have been multiple articles recently talking about how they're aggressively trying to extend him, and from what I understand, he doesn't want an insane amount of money either. So that's good, because we don't need to mention it, but the team is not always there about spending money. And I will say on that as well, it has bitten them before sometimes. Example, Odor, they gave him that contract, totally fell through. Shin-Soo Choo was actually good, though, so that was worth it, and same with Beltre. But occasionally it does fall through, and that's just the way baseball goes. So they should, in my opinion, fully extend Joey Gallo. I would say something in the range of 4 to 6 years. I discussed this in my video yesterday, actually, for a second. But something around 4 to 6 years, maybe around an annual value of $15 to $20 million, because he has the Gold Glove defense. He's pretty fast and has an incredible arm. Of course, he's going to strike out a lot, but he does get on base and has the ability to hit a home run 500 feet at any given moment. So he's slumping right now, though, but it's partially because the whole team is. So there's no one in front of him or behind him that is giving him much to work with. But with all that being said, something around like 6 years, maybe $120 million ish would be good. He is 27 years old, so you don't want to make the extension like 10 years and have him here till he's 37, Just start with one like that, and then kind of what they did with Beltre, get on, okay, we'll do another year for another $18 million, something like that. Probably, honestly, what they gave Beltre would be good. I believe they gave Beltre something like 6 years, $96 million, but that was, of course, because he was unproven to be as good as we all know he is. So conclusion with Joey Gallo, extend him, give him enough to keep him here, but not an unreasonable amount to where it's going to bite them in the butt. And I think that will be a good step one. Of course, make sure they get Jack Leiter, which they should. Don't freak out on that. But those are some of the things they can do. It just has to start from the top level of the actual owners, which is Ray Davis and Bob Simpson, I think. So start with them. Say, hey, do y'all actually want to run this team anymore? I know you're counting up the stacks, and then keep going to every level below that and restructure. I mean, it's a rebuild, right? They call it a rebuild for a reason. So I just said a lot in about 18, 19 minutes, and I just want y'all to know that not all hope is lost. Like I mentioned, a couple of good guys coming up soon. You got Cole Winn, Hans Kraus, Sam Huff, Jack Leiter, once they get him fully on board. They just had Curtis Terry up, and he has insane potential. You're going to have Willie Calhoun back soon. Joey Gallo will get back on his ways that he is good soon. So not all hope is lost for Texas. It's just a little bit more of a rebuild than they probably wanted, and that's totally understandable. I mean, it does happen, sports aren't perfect, but coming up on the 50th anniversary of the franchise moving to Texas, they should definitely be evaluating where everybody in the franchise stands. I'm saying literally everybody. So no one is off the hook here. It is a franchise and organizational effort to get the team back to where they want to be. And with that, I will end my huge rant and tangent here, which I told y'all if I get on this podcast, I can do very easily. That is going to be it for this episode of the TXRF podcast. I said everything that I wanted to say, I think. And part of what I want to do with this podcast is have some of y'all come on here and have it be a discussion instead of me just talking into the mic for literally 20 minutes today. So in the future, I will be posting about that on the YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. So stay on the lookout for that, because I will need some other fans' perspectives as well. If you're listening to this on YouTube, be sure to support the podcast on Anchor FM. And if you're on Anchor FM, go check it out on YouTube. So you can have it up on lots of platforms. Everything specifically is linked, I believe, on the Anchor FM site. So go give me that support, and hopefully here soon we will be seeing the end of this 12-game losing streak. Historical in the bad way. So with all that being said, though, I will talk to y'all later.